What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActionMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm talking about Analyze That. Why am I talking about Analyze That? It's from 2002. It has audio description. It's because Analyze This is celebrating its 25th anniversary. So at this on the same day, I dropped reviews for both films because I can't see myself in 3 years doing the 25th anniversary of Analyze That by itself. It's not a good movie. So. Um, Yes, the gang's back together for the most part. They do kill off a character in the beginning. It does open up with a funeral sequence. I guess spoilers, but this movie is again 22 years old, and it is like at the beginning of the film. So basically, it's the at least the first time you return to Billy, the first time you see Billy Crystal's character again, he is at a funeral for his father. Literally, that is how you're reintroduced to his character. So they offed Senior, and that they make that the whole film. And he's like, "We're grieving. It's a process." Like he keeps saying that the whole film. Meanwhile, Paul's in jail, and people keep trying to kill him. So he pretends like he's had some sort of psychotic break, and he keeps singing West Side Story. And Ben has to come in and evaluate him, and he has fun with the evaluation because he kind of thinks Paul's faking it, and slaps him and injects him with a needle and stuff like that. But he maintains De Niro. He's a great actor, um, and I know all these things are supposed to be funny. They're not as funny. Some of the times it's like, well, that's obviously somebody would hear that and be like, well, he's lost his West Side Story character, uh, and get him out of jail. And then I think the funniest line for me is when uh, they realize Joey is out of jail. Ben sees Joey out of jail, um, and and he's like, "Oh, weren't you in?" He's like, "You know what? The case, it just went away. It's, two of the witnesses, they decided not to testify, and the third committed suicide." How did he commit suicide? Well, he stabbed himself in the back 4 times and threw himself off of the bridge. It's a sad thing, you know. I was like, that's a great line. I don't like the movie, but that's a great line. The Jelly just like deadpans. Well, he stabbed himself in the back 4 times and then threw himself over a bridge. Okay. Um, but yeah, the rest of the film is just kind of like it's trying to make the magic. It has some ideas here that are like, well, that could be funny. Um, like eventually we get to God after he tries like every fucking job in the world. We eventually get to Paul getting a job as like a consultant on the set of a mafia show, which is where he should have gone in the first place. I like he's at a car dealership, and then he like I don't know, he's a maitre d'. It's just like he's trying these other jobs, and it's like no, obviously none of these jobs are going to work for him. Um, so yeah, him consulting as a being a mob consultant, yeah, duh. Like, should have been the first job that, and they were like, well, there's a thing that shoots it because I love how he's like, well, they reached out to me because we know each other, Ben, Billy Crystal, and that's how he gets the job. And I'm like, why didn't you just reach out to them? You know there's a mob show that shoots locally, and you didn't think to go, hey, he'd be great in this. Why don't you take a look at it? Um, so meanwhile, the FBI is basically letting him out into Ben's custody because they want to see if he gets mixed up in crime again, so they can bring more criminals. Like they can use him as bait to bait more mob bosses. It's really dumb. Like they have Ben labeled as like temporary, as a temporary facility or something like that. His house. It's like this is one of the dumbest plots. That when you keep hearing things that are said, you're like, that's not real. That can't be real. That's not a thing. He just goes home. He doesn't even have like an ankle monitor. You know what I'm saying? Like he just literally fucking goes home. He just they release him. I love when he's like, yeah, you got to do this and this and this and make sure he's gainfully employed for his parole hearing. I'm like, but he would have been in jail and he wouldn't have been able to be gainfully employed in jail. So how is why does he have to be employed to further the plot of the film? To have some fun sequences where he yells at people who buy cards? Like, make it make sense, you know? This film is full of that. This film is full of really dumb ideas. And eventually it leads to something and the movie ends. And I'm conflicted on, like, first of all, love the first movie. I rewatched it, and spoiler alert, in case you don't want to watch the video, basically, I realized it is a Desert Island movie for me, and I love Analyze This. And I just hadn't watched it in a while, but when it came back to me, I even, like, it wasn't even a great audio description track. This one has a much better audio description track. It's all over the place. I love it. But, which is sad, because the other one needs the TLC. Um, but I didn't even notice. I wasn't even paying attention to the audio description track because I was just like back in the movie again, and I was remembering all the quotes. Here, I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember the quotes. I just remember working in a movie theater when this thing came out and being like, "Oh God, it's not as good as the original." And there's a reason why there's only two of these, is because this one didn't do as well at the box office. It wasn't critically received. No one liked it, so they stopped making sequels. But uh, if I was to look at this for pros, now that I'm 22 years removed from it, um, I would say the pros are Lisa Kudrow has been given some really solid lines. Her character has also unfortunately been given some really dumb shit to do, but she has some really great lines. I love her. I'm gonna go sit in the bathtub and hopefully drown. Like, I love that line. That was great. And she has the line with the female FBI agent. You know, little advice from one from one professional to another: pantsuit, because the FBI agent, I guess, is wearing a skirt and does the leg crossing, Sharon Stone leg crossing thing, which distracts Billy Crystal. So, and pisses Lisa Kudrow off. So she's given a couple good lines. In the first film, she's really sort of like a third character, and she's not as funny. Here, I feel like she has some really biting lines that just cut through. But there isn't really much more to say than that. Aside from a couple of witty retorts and lines, the film picks up Kathy Moriarty, which is cool because it's like a retaming of De Niro and Moriarty from Raging Bull. But I don't know if is that a reason for a movie to exist? Like, Kathy could have been in any other movie with De Niro. There isn't really like a compelling reason to say this movie needs to exist. It's also, I winced at a very homophobic line that De Niro drops in this, and in a film, I don't think the first one had one, and then in the second film, he's got one where he just drops it, and I'm like, damn, Bobby, you could have said no to that line. You have the power to turn to Harold Ramis and be like, I'm not, this line, we don't need this. The film will work without this line, because it will. The film will work without the line. If you take that line out, if you reedit the movie and delete the line, it works. I promise you it does. And it just, yeah, it just feels like in 2002, it was like, would he have said that? Anyway, but, anyway, I didn't like this movie originally, and I still don't like this movie, so it's not like the revisiting and hearing that line was like, oh my God, no, I can't like the movie anymore. I was like, well, I already didn't like the movie. So it's another reason for me to not like the movie. Yeah, a couple of jokes, I will say it wasn't quite as bad. That's the thing about, we use that phrase, like, looking back on things with rose-colored glasses, and I think it goes two ways. If you liked something and then it feels like you loved it. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes things just get magnified and you're like, oh man, back in the day it was really awesome to do this. And then you go back and you're like, this was kind of boring. Never mind. Or that movie didn't really work. God, what did I ever see in this movie or a TV show? So that happens from things that you like, but also There could be things where you're like, man, that movie sucked. God, that movie was terrible. Oh my God, that's like the worst movie I ever saw. And then you watch and you're like, actually, no, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's just not a good movie. And that's kind of what this is. It's like when you see the first one and then you go into the sequel, they're like wildly different in terms of quality. But also, if you, I can say that about a lot of things. Like if you jumped from Transformers, the first one, all the way down to Transformers: The Last Night, I think people would be like, "What the happened?" If you didn't show them two, three, and four to show a continuous precipitous drop in quality, I think most people would be like, "Oh my god." So unfortunately, this film only has two films of the franchise, so you just go straight down the tube, um, and it just couldn't. It couldn't keep that energy. It couldn't keep that vibe. It doesn't have the same wit and retort to it. It doesn't even really pull a Toy Story, which is probably what it should have done, which is had, instead of revisiting Paul and this mafia crisis, it probably should have flipped the script and had a situation where Paul had to rescue Ben, because that was the first movie already did the other thing. So the movie kind of needed a rewrite where Ben was in danger and then Paul came to his rescue. Would have made a much better flip of a movie. Would have been to flip the situation and show how possibly could Paul help Ben, and instead of trying to retread and pull laughs out of something that you kind of got right the first time. So, but I did like the audio description track. Um, I would say probably, I thought it was interesting that we got. Uh, there are two thoughts to this process. And I know what the book was written on audio description, so I get it. They did it, but in one way, at the beginning of the film, the narrator reads off the cast and who they're playing, as if it says Robert De Niro as Paul Vitti, Billy Crystal as Ben Sobel. I mean, it tells you who they are. So at that point, it's like you're giving us names. We know who they are. Um, but yet it still gives you the character description before the name. It'll tell you, a blonde woman, instead of telling you Lisa Kudrow's character's name, even though her name is mentioned literally in the opening credits of the film, which is before anything else happens. So I don't know. I'm conflicted on it, because it's like, if you're telling us who all these people are at the very beginning of the film, I feel like feel free, but at the same time, we should have character descriptions in case, I guess, somebody didn't watch the first movie, but you should watch the first movie. I care less about it in sequels, because it's like, please watch the other movie. Sequels are so weird if you just go into them not having seen the first movie anyway. I've had this argument before. I'm like, I don't actually care if the person jumps into the sixth Fast and Furious film and has seen no other films in the franchise. And it's like, I don't know what any of these people look like. And it's like, I don't know. Did you see the other movies? You know? Like, have you, maybe you should see the other movies? But then again, there's some franchises that don't have audio description past a certain point. Like it's like the studios are refusing to audio describe them. So almost like if the first film in the franchise is Fast and Furious 6 that has audio description, then maybe you have to do all the work that you would have normally done in an earlier film. So as I continue to review movies, I continue to go down these fucking rabbit holes of madness, because studios can't just fucking audio describe movies. They just, and it won't travel. And it's like, where is it? Why isn't it on this film? Why is it on two streaming services, but only like one of them has audio description? Why is it on every VOD platform, but only Fandango at home has it? You know, so I guess I will surrender and say thank you for the great character descriptions for sequels that were introduced in another film. Because Hollywood cannot be trusted, I now have to accept the fact that that is the way things should be. Because God forbid, you know, you may never analyze this with audio description, but you may analyze that, and so you may get enough character description out of the sequel to be able to go back and watch the first film and be like, oh, I get it now. I see. see what these characters are. Anyway, um, done with that. And done with this film. Not as bad as I remembered it being, but still not a film I would recommend. I'm gonna give Analyze that a C minus. It just, yeah, I gave the first film an A plus, so this is a precipitous drop. It's just a sequel no one needed. It's Speed 2 Cruise Control. I would argue slightly better, but it is Speed 2 Cruise Control. It's like, why? And Keanu even said no to that. So again, why? But anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.